Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kingdom Talks. I'm here today with a special guest, Mr. Barry. Kindly introduce yourself to us.
So my name is Barry Adkins, and the reality is I'm not the right guy to be here telling this story. I am living proof that God doesn't choose the qualified, he qualifies the chosen.
Mr. Barry, I usually like to ask my guests to share with us how they came about giving your life to Jesus, if you can recall that precious moment in your life.
So it was a bit of an evolution. I grew up a Catholic, uh, went to Catholic school, went to Catholic, did everything. Probably about 23 or 24 years ago, I discovered I really wasn't getting anything out of that. I started going to Bible churches. Um, in 2005, my son died of alcohol poisoning, and it completely changed my life because I was angry with God. The God that I knew, I'm like, why would you do this to me? Why take me, let my son live, right? And I told him so. A couple days after he passed away, I had another life-changing event. A little bit of grace here. Um, I was laying in bed. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I can only describe that I felt like someone had walked in the room. It's hard to describe this for him. And there was a light I'd never seen before and haven't seen since. And there was a message. Kevin didn't suffer, and something very good would come from this. Why God chose me for this message, I have no idea. But it completely changed my perspective on who God is and what he's capable of. Did it make everything okay? No, but I understood at that point that I had a mission. I did not know what that mission was because God has a sense of humor. Something very good will come from this is not, that's vague, right? And I've spent the last almost 20 years chasing it.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Barry. Myself, what I've learned in my walk with Christ is that indeed, when the Bible says that the ways of God are not our ways, um, there are many questions in the heart of humans and few answers. And as a result, we tend to question God. God, where are you? Why did you allow this to happen?
Yeah.
And because God is all knowing, all powerful, He might not give us the answer that we want to hear. But as you said, He would just speak a word of encouragement or comfort. My question to you is that why is it that, especially when it comes to our faith, God specializes in taking our mess, turning it into a message, taking our test, our tribulations into a testimony? In your case, why are you doing what you're doing, being an advocate to young people?
You know, and that's absolutely true. We don't understand how he can operate, why he chose me. Honestly, I'm not the right guy. And that's, and I've told you a bunch of times, um, the idea that, if God would have just sat down and said, hey, this is what I want you to do. I want you to get out and share with hundreds of thousands of people the darkest day of your life, I would have said, nah, you need to pick somebody else because that's just not, did I help out at church? Yes, I volunteered and did some stuff, but nothing like this.
Mm.
It he has a sense of humor. And at this point, you realize you just have to leave it up to him, honestly.
So why, like, I'm still trying to grasp this idea that God uses our darkest moment to accomplish something great. Like Jesus on the cross, crying, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? But that Jesus on the cross accomplished the greatest. I don't want to use the word miracle. The greatest accomplishment, which is the salvation of mankind. God
Yeah.
uses our darkest moment, our betrayal, the death of somebody that we love so much, someone young or old, someone close to us, loss of an investment that you have poured so much into. And then God is saying that I want you to go share your setbacks, your challenges, even your failures.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't understand it. It's something that, you're hoping that God will tell you. For me, it was, okay, could you come back one more time and give me a clue as to what you want me to do? But the one thing I knew, when I went to pick up his ashes, I sit there and they set an urn down in front of
Mm,
me. And inside that urn is the kid that I burped, changed his diapers. I coached his baseball, basketball, soccer, football, all of those things. Everything about him, about Kevin, was in those urns, in
mm,
that urn. And there's one thing I knew at that point, and that was that I didn't want to be a victim, because the world really doesn't need any more victims. We've got plenty already. And maybe this is the message, that when something bad happens, the most you can hope for is to make something good come from it.
mm.
And when I talk to other people who are suffering from grief, that's one of the things I tell them. The most you can hope for is to make something good come from what
Mm.
happened.
I mean, exactly what you have said. The Bible actually confirms that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love Him and those who are called according to His purpose. No matter how severe, prolonged, complex a situation is, God can always turn things around. When I watched your video, I think Kevin was on a call. I think he was crying. Um, if I can share my own testimony in high school, when the first time I smoked weed, the cops took me home. I smoked weed as a result of peer pressure because I wanted to
Yep.
fit in. I didn't want to look like I'm weird. And I wasn't a believer. But when I smoked weed, it didn't really, like, my body was something else. I was reacting. And then I tried alcohol. I didn't like the taste. I'm like, okay, like I try to do wrong. I try to do evil, but I believe it was the grace of God just protecting me. And then when I watched your video, I think you were speaking to the insurance broker, and then he was asking you life insurance, and then you're saying that for who? And then he was saying that for Kevin, and then you're saying that, well, Kevin is still young. He has life ahead of himself. So why are you asking for life insurance? I would ask the same question. Why would God take somebody who's young, still starting life?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little more to that too, because when he decided to move out, because this happened on the day he moved out of the house.
Hmm.
And I remember him coming into our living room and sitting down in this brown chair and talking about how he couldn't believe his life was finally beginning. Right. And then 2 weeks later, a police officer is standing in front of that same brown chair telling
Oh,
me that he's gone and handing me his driver's license.
I mean, he was just planning life ahead of himself, and
Yeah.
you were a supportive father. Um, Tell us more about. You mentioned in the video that I watched about alcohol poisoning. This is the first time I'm hearing that. I mean, again, I don't drink. I don't know much about alcohol. What is the cause of alcohol poisoning, especially for the audience, for young people in particular, for them to know about this?
So it's possible to drink enough alcohol to kill you. And when someone is passed out, that's the beginning of alcohol poisoning.
Mm.
And what I tell everybody is you can take a chance and hope they sleep it off. But if you're ever in that situation where someone is passed out, I tell them to think about Kevin's buddy Craig. He's the one that found him. And it's a night he'll never forget. I promise you. It's possible to have these things happen. And it happens more often than you would think. And, everybody's afraid to call 911, but um, think about the regret
Mm.
if you don't do that and something happens. And it's not unusual for people to be taken to the hospital with alcohol poisoning. So it's something that happens.
So, as a loving and a caring father, um, I know going through that process in that moment when Kevin was gone, I know it's not easy to cope with somebody so young, somebody that you love. I remember an account in the Bible about David. The Bible said David encouraged himself in the Lord, strengthened himself in the Lord. At that time, for you, Mr. Barry, how were you able to comfort yourself? How were you able to cope with the loss of your beloved son?
It was all about the message. The message was that something very good would come from this.
Mm,
And I did not know what that was,
mm,
but I also, at some level, understood that it was on me to make that happen. And I did things like write a letter to the editor of the paper and, a few things like that. And one other thing there is that, and this was the part that I'm pretty convinced was God breathed. We had his ashes and we had to decide what to do with them. And I had grown up in Kalispell, Montana. It's up in the northwest corner of the state. And Kevin had been there a number of times and always talked about wanting to buy a ranch up there. So we decided to take his ashes there. I suppose the normal thing to do would put him in your car and drive there. But I decided to put them in my backpack and walk 1,400 miles from Gilbert, Arizona to Kalispell, Montana, and tell the story along the way. Because I guarantee you, you don't ever want to go through this.
mm. Wow, wow. Um, you mentioned, I was going through your profile, you mentioned about forgiveness. Do you feel like you're the cause? Because sometimes we can feel like we are the cause of why certain things happen to people that we love. Did you feel any guilt, any blame, or any sense of responsibility that you could have done better for your son, Kevin?
Oh, absolutely. I'm his dad, right?
Yes.
Your number one, number two, number three, number four, your number one job is to keep him alive. And I didn't get that done. And I heard a pastor describe it best once. He said that anger and vengeance lead to one thing: destruction. Forgiveness leads to healing.
Mm,
And sometimes the most important person you need to forgive is yourself.
mm,
Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes.
yeah.
It's the way you handle it that matters. And the Bible teaches us that. And you don't have to go any further than the Lord's Prayer, right? Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
I like your attitude because you said that you believe that something good was gonna come out from it. Some people don't have such attitude when things like that happen. They feel like their world is completely a mess. All hope is lost. Whereas for you, you felt like there's something good coming out of that. That's not an ordinary, normal response.
And that's the message I received, Raheem. And
Wow.
that's really been the focus. And when we talk about grief, because I'm sure there's some people in your audience that may be dealing with grief, um, grief is about, so this has been over 19 years ago. And so I think there's a couple things that are important to understand about it. Some of this sounds a little harsh, but hang with me here. When you lose a loved one like that, the old you dies with that person. There's a new you there. That new you may or may not be a better person. Quite often, when someone loses a loved one, they turn to drugs and alcohol. Their lives spiral out of control.
Mm.
But there's a new you there that can be a better you, right? The old you is gone. You will never get, and that's what I struggle with, is I wanted to feel the way I did the day before he passed away. And that's not possible. You will never feel that way again.
Mm.
It's as simple as that. But there's a new you there that can even be better than the old you. Almost like, I wouldn't say born again, but you know what I'm saying? There's a new you there.
You're absolutely right. Most people find it very hard to move on. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. Most people find it very, very hard to move on. When things like that happen, the whole you die with it. But it's as if the old you wants to resurrect. The old you wants to hold on to what has passed. And sometimes our past, we can leave our past in our present, we can leave our past in the future. Whereas God is saying that, behold, I will do a new thing and it shall spring forth. Why do you think we as human beings find it very, very hard to let go at times, to be released, to start afresh, especially when God is calling you?
That's a good question. I think it's human nature because
Mm.
you're comfortable in the old you. You want things to be, your memory tells you that those were the good old days, right?
Yes, yes.
And you want to go back to the good old days because you remember the good things, but you don't necessarily remember the bad things. And uh, I can tell you, I'm 66 years old. Your life is going to change a lot of times
Mm.
throughout your lifetime. Things that you never imagined were going to happen will
Mm.
happen. And as the saying goes, people think, well, I can't see where God is in my life. But when you look in the rear view mirror, you go, yeah, there he was, 100%. And I look back on things that happened, and how I ended up here had nothing to do with me. It was God in his gentle way pushing us different ways. Now, something very good will come from this. That was less than gentle, but I tell people that there's a still small voice there, but you have to be quiet to listen to that voice that will nudge you in the right direction.
What will be your message to someone who have felt like their whole world is upside down, um, and there's no sense of meaning in life? There's no sense of worth in life. There's no sense of, okay, God, what is my life all about? Why am I here? Many people will just wake up in the morning, eat, drink, go to work. But I always feel like there's more to life than that. Even Jesus says in the Bible that our life does not consist of the amount of possession. It goes beyond that. And man does not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. What would your message be about purpose? That our lives matter, our lives have a sense of purpose, that no matter our background, no matter our past, no matter our age, no matter our current situation, there's purpose out there for us.
For me, the the best thing you can do is not make your life about you. It's about giving back. And it could be as simple as opening the door for someone and letting them in ahead of you. It's about volunteering. It's about the little things that you can do to give back. Because no matter how bad you think your life is, there's other people out there that have it worse. How you decide to give back, that's the tricky part, right? I frankly still like volunteering at the church, but I'm not the guy that's up there as a greeter or anything like that. I like helping the facilities guy move chairs around. I enjoy going and doing that kind of stuff. And for me, if you want to get out of a funk, for lack of a better term, start giving back. Volunteer to help somebody. Do something for somebody who has absolutely nothing they can do for you. Right? You're not looking for someone to do something for you, but go out and do things for people who can't do anything for you.
Yes, actually, that's a wonderful advice because sometimes we're so self-centered. We think
Yeah.
that life revolves around us, but really life
And
revolves
you
around
don't.
God. You know?
That's the key takeaway is that life doesn't, the earth doesn't revolve around you. And
Mm,
the more you give back, people always talk about how great it is you went and did this. And people ask me about it all the time. And, how do you continue to do this after 19 years? And I tell them, this is as much about me feeling better as it is you, right? I feel like I'm giving back. I'm doing
mm,
something to better the world. And
yeah.
that's what we need is people that will do things to better the world. Don't crawl in the corner and become a victim because this or that happened to you, because those things are all terrible. There's no doubt. I'm not denying that. But really, the most you can hope for is get out and try to make something good come from it. Maybe you start your own ministry. Maybe you go volunteer at a food bank or whatever it is. Like I said, it can be as easy as just vacuuming at the church or something, helping someone out, helping a neighbor out, go mow their lawn. I don't know, whatever it is that you feel like you should do.
I mean, that's what humanity is all about. You know, we are
It is.
interdependent on each other. You know what I mean? But we live in a society, in a culture where we have been taught to be independent. We have been taught to seek our own interests, disregard people. You meet an old person, you disrespect them. You know, we have to bring back those days where it's all about community. And because God is a God
And
of
that's what
community, is a God
Jesus
of
was all about.
relationship.
That's what Jesus was all about, right? He was not about himself.
Yes.
He was about helping other people, right? That's really, when you sum it up, he was there to help
Yes.
and to guide and to do things. He's washing the disciples' feet. It's that feeling of giving and helping out.
The only time Jesus really had time for himself, it's when he makes time for prayers. You know?
Yes. And that's important too. That quiet time. I'll leave you with a very interesting thought. Um, I had an uncle. I was up in the wilderness, up in Montana. Right, we were out in the middle of. We went in there on horseback, right, and we're sitting up on top of this mountain, and it's just beautiful, and it's just absolute quiet. And I turned to my uncle and I said, "It is so quiet up here." And
Mm,
he said, "Yep, and it's got a lot to say."
yeah. That I mean,
Yeah.
we live in a
Yeah.
very busy world, I'm telling you. Sometimes we need to be still. We need that quietness and just to
Yes.
hear that, like, as you said, hear that inner voice. Because sometimes we're so loud and we're so distracted that God cannot speak to us. Because our mind is
Yes.
constantly, oh, I have to go pick up my kid. Oh, I have to go to work. I have to go to church. Like we're
Yeah.
so busy with so many things in life. How would you tell somebody who's going to listen to this podcast or watch this podcast and they're saying that, okay, I've heard your story. I'm not a believer. I'm not a Christian. I don't know who this Jesus Christ that you guys are talking about, quoting scriptures. What would you tell them about this Jesus who has been there for you, this God who has given you that message that you said that you felt like there's something good that will come out of whatever challenges that you went through? How would you tell that person who doesn't believe in Jesus, but Jesus is really the key factor here to make things happen, to give you strength and courage to go on?
You know, um, it's that's sort of like the movie I Can Only Imagine. I'm sure you've seen that movie, but he's there for you and he can help you. I tell everybody, the Bible is a long Bible, right? There's a lot of stuff in it, let's start with the New Testament and read what Matthew said, the Beatitudes. Just read that part of it and understand that he is there. And you have to be still to be able to feel him. But for me, after what happened to me, he's very real. He is there. He loves you no matter where you are or what you've done, what's been done to you, as they say at church I go to. He still loves you and he wants a relationship with you. And it's really just up to you to let him in. You don't have to do anything special. You don't have to. We're all sinners, right? And he's there. And he loves you right where you are.
Awesome, awesome. So finally, Mr. Barry, in case the audience are interested to know more about what you do, how can they reach out to you?
So a couple things there. So I still tell Kevin's story. I tell it at churches and schools. I'm willing to travel. There's no fee when I travel to do it. The only thing, if I have to leave the state of Arizona, is travel expenses. I've got lots of references. If people want to reach out and hear the story. Two ways to get a hold of me. The website is kevinslastwalk.com. On that page is a link to my Facebook page, which is where I will post this podcast and where I'm more active on Facebook. So on Facebook, it's just Kevin's Last Walk and all one word. And that's how you can get a hold of me. If you want to read the book, it's on Amazon, and it's also called Kevin's Last Walk, A Father's Final Journey with His Son.